A boy who can see all possible futures must decide whether to go with his mother or stay with his father when they divorce. Unable to choose, he begins to see all the lives he could live to find the best option. But instead of helping him, it paralyzes him even more. In the end, he makes a decision, but not the one you're imagining. In the year 2092, humanity has conquered immortality thanks to the infinite renewal of cells. Only one mortal remains, Nemo Nobody, who's 118 years old, but his memories are unclear, and there's no record of his past. Nemo lives under constant surveillance, and every week there's a vote to decide whether he should die naturally or continue to live artificially. Intrigued by Nemo's past, a psychiatrist named Dr. Fieldheim uses hypnosis to help him remember. Thanks to this, Nemo manages to access the deepest parts of his mind, even reaching memories from before he was born. During the doctor's absence, a curious journalist infiltrates the facility to interview him and understand what life was like before immortality. Nemo explains that, before being born, he was in a white place with other unborn children. There, everyone knew their future and how it could change depending on their decisions. Before birth, the angels of forgetfulness erased those memories, but they forgot about Nemo, which is why he can remember many possible lives. That means the elderly Nemo can see different possible pasts. He also says that babies can choose their parents, and that he chose his because his mother smelled nice. Thus, Nemo is born with the ability to see all possible futures. As a child, while trying to decide which dessert to choose, he reflects that every decision is irreversible. You can't go back. That's why it's so hard to choose. But as long as you haven't decided, everything remains possible. One day, he meets 3 neighborhood girls, Anna, Elise, and Jean. Later, Nemo predicts that his father's car will run over a woman because he forgot to apply the handbrake. He tells his mother that he can see the future, that the angels of forgetfulness didn't erase his memory. But she doesn't believe him, and replies that you can only remember the past. Billions of years ago, the universe was smaller than a proton. With the Big Bang, it expanded, and space and time emerged. We can move within the 3 dimensions of space, width, height, and depth, but not time. Time only moves forward. Therefore, if Nemo can see the future, that would mean time has been reversed. Later, we will find clues to understand this better. Just a quick pause to say that if you're enjoying this video and haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot and really helps me keep making more videos and content like this. Alright, let's get back to the story. At school, Nemo watches Anna as she jumps into the water from a diving board. Later, he jumps too, even though he doesn't know how to swim, and an adult rescues him. Another day, he follows his mother into the woods and discovers that she's being unfaithful to his father with Anna's dad. Shortly after, his parents get divorced, and that moment shatters him. On a train station platform, his mother asks if he wants to go with her on the train or stay with his father. Nemo doesn't know what to choose, so he begins to imagine all the possible lives that could arise from each decision. In one of them, he runs toward his mother and moves to Canada with her. In another, he stays with his father. In the storyline where Nemo lives with his mother, he becomes a rebellious teenager. He tries to scare away his mother's new boyfriend, Harry, Anna's father, by telling him things like he's going to die, get hit by a train. At school, a new girl arrives, Anna. One day, at the beach, she approaches Nemo and invites him to swim with her friends. But Nemo, ashamed because he doesn't know how to swim, replies that he doesn't swim with idiots. Anna gets offended and walks away. 20 years go by, and one day, Nemo runs into Anna at a train station. They greet each other awkwardly and say goodbye. Nemo regrets how he treated her that day at the beach. He mentally returns to the scene, and this time, he decides to confess that he doesn't know how to swim. Anna stays with him. They spend time together and fall in love. Over time, Harry and Nemo's mother makes their relationship official, and Anna and her father move in with them. Anna and Nemo begin a romance. One night, they tell each other they're in love, and that they can't imagine life without one another. But everything changes when Harry and Nemo's mother separate. Before leaving for New York with her father, Anna asks Nemo to wait for her every Sunday at the lighthouse until they can meet again. They make love one last time and say goodbye. Nemo goes to the lighthouse every Sunday, but Anna never returns. She writes him letters, but his mother throws them away without telling him. Over time, they lose contact, and the relationship between Nemo and his mother deteriorates even more. 2 decades pass. Nemo can't stop thinking about Anna, and she feels the same. Nemo works as a pool cleaner, hoping to run into her one day, since she loves to swim. Eventually, they meet again at the train station and recognize each other instantly. They embrace and share a passionate moment. Anna confesses that during their time apart, she swore never to fall in love again, and that this moment was the only thing she'd been waiting for. To give up all possible lives just for one with him. But she also tells him that she's afraid of losing him again, and that she needs more time. She gives him her number and asks him to call her in 2 days so they can meet at the lighthouse. However, Nemo loses the number when a storm washes the note away. Even so, he waits for Anna at the lighthouse every day, but she never arrives. I want to pause here because Anna's words struck me as truly beautiful. She said, "This is all I've been waiting for, all this time, to give up all possible lives just for one with you." My goodness, I don't know about you, but to me that sounds like one of the most beautiful and bravest things someone can say to the person they love. That's what choosing really means. That's what true commitment looks like. And I say this because we live in a world that constantly tells us the opposite. That if something gets complicated, you should change it. That if a relationship isn't perfect, you better find a new one. There are thousands of options, and choosing just one means missing out on all the rest. And yes, choosing means letting go. It's saying no to all those other versions of yourself that you could have been, with someone else, in another place, in another story. But for me, rather than diminishing the value of the choice, it multiplies it, because you have to let go of many things in order to hold on to one. That is poetry. I love you so much that I'm willing to never know what could have happened with all the other people I might have been happy with, because you are enough. Wow. Now that doesn't mean everything will be easy, or that you'll never have doubts, or that it'll even work out. But it does mean you're willing to walk with that person, to try, to make it through the good days and the gray ones, the challenges and the questions, because you believe that path is worth it. In a world where we're so used to discarding things out of fear of missing out on something better, having someone say that out of everything they could live, they chose to live this with you is sublime. Maybe that's what love is about. Not finding someone perfect necessarily, but someone who makes it worth giving up all the other possibilities. Someone you want to stay with, even knowing you could be somewhere else, in another story, but you're not, because you choose this one. In another timeline, Nemo marries Anna. He works as a host on a science program. One day, while driving home, a bird crashes into his windshield, and Nemo loses control of the car, plunging into a lake and drowning. On the other hand, in the timeline where Nemo goes to live with his father has an accident and ends up in a wheelchair. Nemo starts working at a local shop after school and spends much of his time taking care of him. In his free time, he enjoys riding his motorcycle and writing science fiction stories about a journey to Mars. He goes to a school party and sees a girl named Elise being rejected by Stefano. She leaves in tears and asks Nemo to walk her outside. She asks him to tell her about himself. Nemo talks about Mars, and she, excited, makes him promise that when she dies, he will scatter her ashes there. Nemo tries to kiss her, but she pulls away. She tells him they shouldn't, because they don't know each other. He comforts her, and they share a kiss, but she runs away. Nemo goes to her house to tell her he loves her, but he sees her with Stefano. He leaves on his motorcycle, but slips on a leaf and has an accident that leaves him in a vegetative state. He can hear and feel, but can't move or speak. He focuses on moving his fingers like he did when he wrote, and manages to lift one. That brings him back to the moment when he saw Elise with Stefano. This time, he waits for Stefano to leave, and then approaches her to confess his love. Elise cries and tells him she still loves Stefano, even though he doesn't love her. Nemo vows to marry the first girl who dances with him at the next school dance. He meets Jean and dances with her, only to make Elise jealous. On the way home, he promises himself never to leave anything up to chance again. He's determined to marry Jean, become rich, have a big house, and have 2 children. That future comes true, but it feels empty. So he starts making all his decisions randomly, flipping a coin marked yes and no. He leaves everything to Jean and abandons his family. At the airport, he sees someone waiting for Mr. Jones. He flips the coin. It lands on yes. They take him to a luxury hotel where a mobster mistakes him for the real Mr. Jones and shoots him. Nemo returns to the moment he visits Elise to confess his love. And this time, he decides to insist. Even though she tells him she still loves Stefano, he doesn't give up. He promises to take her ashes to Mars someday and asks for a chance. Elise agrees. They marry and have 3 children. But she falls into a deep depression, and her behavior becomes increasingly unstable. Nemo does everything he can to save the marriage. He takes care of the children and tries to be a good husband. One day, after dropping the kids off at school, he comes home to find Elise crying in the rain. He picks her up and carries her inside. She asks him if he loves her, and he answers that he couldn't live without her. But Elise confesses that she still loves Stefano. That night, while Nemo sleeps, she leaves the house. In another version, Nemo also marries Elise, but right after the wedding, a truck explodes and Elise dies. Nemo keeps her ashes and travels to Mars to fulfill his promise. He encounters Anna on the spaceship. He tells her he went to Mars because of a promise, and she says she studies time. that in 2092, a great implosion will occur, and those who reach that date will win a free journey through time. But before they can continue talking, the ship is destroyed by meteorites. In a similar version, Elise dies in an explosion, and Nemo works for a science channel. In this timeline, it's his assistant who suffers the accident and falls into a lake. At the funeral, Nemo meets Anna, who turns out to be the widow of his assistant. He offers his condolences and tries to talk to her, but Anna walks away. I want to pause for a moment to recap what we've seen so far. Nemo faces the impossible decision of choosing between going with his mother or staying with his father, and that dilemma was the starting point of the entire story. Because Nemo hasn't been able to choose, and not being able to choose has left him trapped in his own mind, reviewing all the possibilities. But instead of helping him, that ability to see all his possible futures has paralyzed him even more. And that makes me think of existentialism, especially Sartre. There's a well-known phrase from his speech, "Existentialism is a humanism," where he says, "Existence precedes essence." What does that mean? That we don't come into the world already being someone. We first exist, and then, through what we choose, we build ourselves. In fact, that idea fits perfectly with Nemo's name. In Latin, Nemo means nobody. That's what he is, a nobody, being thrown into a world of possibilities, waiting to choose one in order to start existing as someone. But here's the problem. Because, as Sartre said, the human being is condemned to be free. Let me explain the phrase. True freedom means having to take responsibility. It means knowing that everything you choose will have consequences, and those consequences belong to you. And that causes anguish because time only moves in one direction. And once it passes, decisions can no longer be undone. And that's why important decisions scare us so much, because there's no turning back. The responsibility that comes with freedom causes us so much anxiety that many times all we want is certainty, a clear sign, something, anything that tells us what to do. A coin toss, a voice from heaven, anything just to avoid carrying the weight of being wrong. But the curious thing is that Nemo has exactly what we all wish for, certainty. He can see what will happen if he chooses one path or another. That should make everything easier, but it doesn't. It has blocked him even more because no path is perfect. Each one contains something good and something painful. And if no option is clearly better than the other, choosing becomes even more difficult because choosing one means giving up all the others. To choose is to accept a loss. And that, in the world we live in, has become especially difficult. Maybe we can't see all our possible futures like Nemo, but we do live in a world full of options for everything. And what happens when there are too many options? Our expectations also increase because the opportunity cost is enormous. We feel that whatever decision we make has to be perfect. And since no option is perfect, it's hard for us to commit to anything for fear of missing out on everything else. Or worse, when we finally do choose and it isn't perfect, because nothing ever is, it becomes very easy to imagine that any other option would have been better, and that thought creates regret. And regret takes value away from the choice you made, even if it was a good one. Even if it was a good decision at the time, you no longer see it that way, because you're comparing it to something that never even happened. So then, how do you make the right decisions? How do we face those difficult decisions that cause us so much anxiety? In Nemo's case, will he ever make a choice? Which of all his visions is the right one? I'll leave all these questions for the end. As he explores all the possible paths, Nemo appears again and again in a surreal world where everyone is dressed the same. He searches for his mother, but she doesn't recognize him and has another child. He finds clues scattered across the city that leads him to an abandoned warehouse, where he discovers a DVD that begins playing on a screen. On it appears the 118-year-old Nemo. He explains that the younger Nemo's life is his past, and that for him, time moves in reverse. It starts from the end and flows toward the beginning. He also tells him that, in that particular universe, the younger Nemo doesn't exist because he was never born. Everything he sees are possible lives projected in the mind of the unborn Nemo. The elderly Nemo says he's living the story from the end, and that if Anna's calculations are correct, he must remain alive until 5:50 a.m. on February 12th, 2092. There are 9 minutes left. After listening to all the versions, the journalist is confused. It's impossible to be in two places at the same time. Which life was the real one? Nemo implies they all are. Each path is correct. He quotes Tennessee Williams, "Everything could have been anything else, and it would have had just as much meaning." What is the right decision? Which is the right path? It's a question we all ask ourselves at some point, sometimes in a very concrete way. Should I move or not? Should I quit or stay? Should I stay with this person or continue alone? and sometimes in a more abstract way, trying to guess what life wants from us. But the more I think about this, the more convinced I am that maybe there's no such thing as a single right choice. What there are different paths, different sets of possibilities, and each comes with its own consequences. Thinking there's only one correct decision is like imagining that decisions and consequences come in neatly matched pairs, as if you choose A and you get exactly consequence A and that's it. But life doesn't work that way. Every decision we make triggers a chain of events that intersects with other choices, with other people, with circumstances we don't control, and that creates effects that keep expanding. Some consequences are good, others not so much. Some are felt immediately, while others take time to show up. Some we see coming, and others can catch us completely off guard. Going with his mother allowed him to be with Anna, but in one of those timelines, marrying Anna ended with him dying in an accident, and in another, their parents separated them. If he had stayed with his father, he wouldn't have experienced his love with Anna, but he would have been spared the pain of losing her. In one line, Elise rejected him, and he ended up with Jean, with whom he built a beautiful family, but he felt empty. In another, he married Elise, whom he truly loved, but in one version, she died, and in another, she lived in depression and left him. So, what was the right decision? Nemo said it, any of them. Each path is the right one, because each path can have meaning. But we keep clinging to the idea that there must be only one valid option, as if only one choice carries true meaning and all the others are mistakes. And that, many times, is exactly what paralyzes us. We go through life searching for that right decision, when in reality, what exists are possibilities, different paths, with good moments and difficult ones, to which we can give meaning. Maybe it's not about finding the perfect path, but about giving meaning to the ones we choose to walk. And when there's no clearly better option, when both have pros and cons, perhaps the wisest thing we can do is stop looking outward for a reason to tell us what to do and look inward instead. Ask ourselves, what option means more to me? Which one am I willing to commit to? Which path am I willing to defend, to inhabit, even if things don't go as I hope? The journalist becomes more and more confused. He doesn't understand how Nemo can exist if he's already dead. He wonders whether something like life after death exists. Nemo laughs and replies with another question. How does he even know he himself exists? Then he reveals that neither of them exists. They're both the product of the imagination of 9-year-old Nemo, the boy who was standing at the train station, forced to make an impossible decision. To figure out which path to choose, the boy imagined each possibility through to its end. But instead of helping, seeing all futures only made the decision even harder. In the end, the 9-year-old Nemo, standing between his mother and father, makes a choice, not to choose. In chess, that's called zugzwang, when the only possible move is not to move. He leaves both parents behind and runs into the forest, where the child blows on a leaf, and that leaf carries us to the timeline where Nemo was waiting for Anna every day at the lighthouse. She finally arrives, and they're reunited. With his decision made, all the scenarios in Nemo's mind begin to collapse. Then the result of the vote is announced. The people have decided to let the elderly Nemo die. At 5:49, Nemo speaks his final words. "Today is the most beautiful day of my life." He says Anna's name and dies. At 5:50, the universe stops expanding and begins to contract. The big crunch occurs. After expanding for billions of years, gravity finally overcomes dark energy, and time begins to move in reverse. Nemo experiences everything in reverse, laughing with joy. He returns to his childhood, sees his parents reconcile, and gets to be with Anna. Sartre said that we are condemned to be free, and Camus said that there is no greater act of rebellion than finding joy in your own punishment. So perhaps there is nothing more rebellious in the face of this condemnation of having to choose than daring to do it. Then taking that freedom seriously, even if we know the path won't be perfect, because that doesn't mean it can't be meaningful. And no, all these reflections won't make choosing any easier. They won't take away the fear of making the wrong choice, or the regret, or that longing for someone else to tell us what to do. But I do believe they can change one thing: how we face life. For me, knowing that I made a decision because at that moment it felt right, because I thought about the consequences and still chose to move forward, that alone justifies having made it. And that, at least for me, gets me out of limbo. Nemo said, as long as you don't choose, everything remains possible. And I respond, yes, but nothing is real. You can't live forever in possibility. Life isn't lived in what could be. Life is lived in what we choose to do with what we have, with fear, doubts, and uncertainty, but also with meaning, with commitment, and with hope that, even if there's no perfect path, we can always make that path our own, to live it with our whole heart. Maybe, in the end, that is what gives it meaning. Thanks for staying until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend who you think might enjoy it. And you and I'll see you in the next one.